We're going to talk about winners and losers of the NBA draft. And Zay, I'll keep it with you to give us your winners, and we'll get to the losers in a second.
How many winners do you want me to go off with real quick?
You could give me one for now, and
One
then
for
I'll
now?
give you one, and then we'll do two.
Well, I'm gonna go with one I don't think people are talking about more recently, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. They drafted Imani Bates at 40 in the second round, and this is a guy who was potentially supposed to be a number one pick before all the off-court issues were happening. I'm gonna go on record and saying Imani Bates could be the starting small forward for the Cleveland Cavaliers by the second half of the season. They don't really have any wings out there that's competing with him. I think he's better than Chetty Osman. I think he's better than Lamar Stevens, and I believe he's a better offensive weapon than Isaac Okoro. So I think Imani Bates, as talented as this guy is, man, he's just so dynamic of a scorer that he's shown us in college and what he's been able to do. He was on a cover of Sports Illustrated, for crying out loud. This man was the prodigy. He was the name that everybody was talking about at one particular time, but until he got in trouble off the court with school and stuff. So I think for him, man, he's just so good of a basketball player, and I think it was one of the biggest steals, if not the biggest steal of the draft. I think he's going to pay dividends over there in Cleveland, and kudos to the Cleveland front office for recognizing he was available, that they still wanted to make a big splash, and they made it with acquiring a player who could be starting caliber the moment he touches his foot in training camp. So right now, Cleveland Cavaliers, biggest winner for me.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks. Offloading that contract of Davis Bertans, moving down 2 picks because of it, and still getting a positional need. You talk about Derek Lively, 7'2", could be a rim protector, could catch fouls from Luka Doncic. We all know Luka Doncic is the ultimate playmaker. He can pass, he can score, he freezes up defenders last second because they don't know if he's going to pass or score. Those lob threats are going to be lethal. I think it's a good pairing alongside Kyrie Irving as well, because Kyrie Irving can play make as well, even though he doesn't get a lot of credit for that. He could block shots. He had like a game in college where he blocked 8 shots. He could set screens, do all the little intangible things that you want your centers to do generally. They also traded for Rashawn Holmes as well. So even though Rashawn Holmes' statistics dropped, he still was a starting caliber center a couple years ago. So he gives you that depth. Also, if I had to give you a second winner, and I'll allow you to give the second winner, I would probably say the CP3 Jordan Poole trade in only one bracket, only one way, because a lot of people have told me the trade doesn't make sense. And at first, I thought the same way. But when you talk about just dumping salary, I think it makes sense. It had more to do about salary dumping. I hope we know that. It's nothing more than a salary dump. You talk about Jordan Poole, he commands a 4-year, $128 million contract. Now you can free up the space that you need to sign Draymond Green, who you should have paid before, and gave him a more lucrative deal than a Jordan Poole because of what he meant to your organization and how he helped build what you got going on. So you could sign him. Maybe Klay Thompson contract in the future, you could sign that guy as well. And it's a short-term investment because he could roll with your second unit. That's what I'll assume he will be in your second unit and stuff like that. And he will help your second unit. Jordan Poole, he could take all the rainbow shots that he want to take with his own team. He doesn't have to worry about Stephen Curry and Draymond Green breathing down his neck every time he take a horrible shot. He could take as much horrible shots as he wants to in Washington. Nobody cares. He probably going to average 25 points per game, and at least he has that ring. Now he can show what he can do from an individual perspective. So I think that trade, it's a win-win from a salary dumping perspective only. Fit, I don't really know about the fit like that. I think CP3 will probably not finish as a member of the Golden State Warriors. I think he'll eventually get traded, and maybe they may get something more valuable. That's a bold take. More valuable than Poole, but Poole has a contract that's very hefty. And when you talk about the CBA, maybe his trade value wasn't really great anyway. So we'll see if teams will more bite on a CP3 deal, because after this year, I believe you could get him off the cheap. So I think it's more of a salary thing. So if I had to give you 2 winners, it would be the Dallas Mavericks and them taking Derek Lively, and also the CP3 Jordan Poole trade. Those are my 2 winners.
Well, the main winner of this draft, of course, was the San Antonio Spurs. They got
Yeah.
exactly who they wanted in Victor Wembanyama. I didn't want to be the cheese ball to go, yeah, Spurs, but they got the guy that they wanted, number one. But also they got City Sissoko, a guy who's been in the G League Ignite for quite some time. He played with Scoot Henderson over the past year. There's a guy who's very dynamic. He's a great forward. He's a guy who's 6'7", very strong, could drive to the rim, could shoot the basketball. Very fine-tuned in the sense of fundamentals, and that's something that Greg Pop loves in his basketball players. And I think that's something that's going to pay dividends, especially working with Victor Wembanyama, who's someone who is going to have to, not have to, will fine-tune his fundamentals with Greg Pop. As Greg Pop is Mr. Fundamentals. That's the man who really wants guys to really hone in on the basics of the game of basketball to then utilize their finesse moves on the court. So I think that's the Spurs for me is the main winners for acquiring the players that they wanted in
Yeah,
this
they
draft.
they won. They won when the lottery picks came in. They
Correct.
won.
Not correct.
So
I mean, if I have to give you one, can I give you one more team? Just one
yeah, go
team
ahead.
that I really felt like one was the Houston Rockets. They actually acquired one of the twins and Amon Thompson at number 4, and then at number 20 they actually got a steal, I believe, in the draft, and Cam Whitmore. And this is a guy who come from Villanova who was projected as being between number 4 and number 10 in the draft. He had a wrist injury that dropped his stock a lot, but you got a guy who was basically projected as a top 10 pick in Cam Whitmore, and that's somebody who's going to pay dividends in the Rockets youth movement. He's a 6'7" forward, very beast of a player, like about 235, 240 in weight, and the guy who is relentless, and not only his defensive tenacity, but also driving into the paint and his shooting touch. So I think that's something that Cam Whitmore is going to be able to bring to the Houston Rockets with the newly coached Ime Udoka. So I think it's going to be interesting how he gets this youth movement running. And I think it's only going to pay dividends to have these guys on such team-friendly contracts, all basically galvanizing and growing together with the likes of Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green.
Yeah, if I had to give you a loser,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna keep this broad, very broad. It will be the NBA draft. The reason why I would say that was because I thought it was very boring, and not only was it boring, there was one scene in particular. I forgot who this chick was, but she tried to demonstrate a crossover to the fans. Immediately, Zay, I got to be real with you. I turned the TV off. I didn't watch the rest of the draft after that. That just turned me off. You know, as I got older, I value my time a lot more. Days are getting shorter, right? It's getting shorter. And I just value my time more. So once I saw that, I was like, nah, I got to get up out of here. You saw JJ Redick and Malika Andrews looking at the chick like, what is she doing? I was like, nah, this is a joke to me. And, it doesn't have that same, flair. 2 of the 7 drafted players in the top 7, I believe, was college players.
Mm-hmm.
I believe most of the players in the top 7, in the top 10 was G League players. Who's watching the G League? Especially when you talk about the NBA playoffs and everything that's going on. College is normally how can I say? It's normally where you get people viewing, especially March Madness. That's like one of the biggest money makers. That's where we really, unless you like Zach, watch college basketball all throughout the years. That's when you really get to know these prospects a little bit more. So it makes watching film a little bit easier because you're familiar with these guys. So when you talk about the G League, I'm like, I don't really watch the G League like that. So I think when you talk about the G League and how a lot of guys are coming into the NBA from the G League, it makes the draft a little bit more diminishing because we look to college basketball to really find out who these prospects are and if they could play on a big stage. And we saw Ja Morant stock shoot up because of that, March Madness run that he had. And a lot of guys as well, they benefited from a March Madness run. So I would say the draft, it just wasn't all that to me. And like I said, when you have commentators that try to do the most instead of do their job and just, evaluate the prospects and try to explain to a fan what a crossover is. I mean, yeah, I'm out. I clicked it off. They're the biggest loser for me.
Yeah, real quick, I want to comment on that because I think the old saying was we have to evaluate these players through college, but now the G League is what allows players to really develop because they're playing against grown men. A lot of guys that's in the G League itself, it's a different tenacity. Guys who used to be former NBA players who are still trying to go back up, who are on 2-way contracts. There's a lot of different variations when we talk about the G League that kind of gives a lot of players the leg up over college players, and then it gives them that little advantage in the sense because you're playing against the physicality. A lot of college kids don't know what to go up against when their first year going against more physical players at times. So I think the G League gives the guys a little leg up opposed to other talents. But I think it's going to be a good dynamic to see college versus G League for the foreseeable future. But my biggest loser is the Orlando Magic. They drafted more guards. to this already guard-heavy team. You know, they had Jalen Suggs. First they had Cole Anthony. Then they drafted Jalen Suggs. Now they drafted Anthony Black, Jet Howard. You know, it's just more guards to keep drafting. You know, this is the same thing they did with their centers. At one point, they had Mo Bamba. Then they had Wendell Carter Jr. They had Vucevic already. So it was already 3 centers. And then they added Bonchero. So it's like it's a never-ending onslaught of Magic that don't know what the hell they want to do. It just seems like they just keep overloading, overstocking on one particular position, thinking they're kind of stocking up talent, stocking up this thing to make trades later on. It just never works out in their favor. They always wind up losing. They always get the shorter end of the stick. And I don't understand what their drafting strategy was. I think they have a nice young core in Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter. They have a solid core. They could have added upon that more by adding Cam Whitmore, by adding a Grady Dick at 11, by adding Jordan Hawkins. You know, these are guys who are tenacious players that went to other teams that they could have been fit well with his Orlando Magic youth movement. So for me, I think the Magics are the losers right now for their reach pick in Jet Howard.
All right.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.